for redevelopment. Click on that, sorry. So the roadmap for redevelopment plans to confront systemic racism is our larger roadmap at play, which is really about reducing the displacement of racialized people through strategic planning, through mentorship, and through relationship building. And it's not something that we do on our own. The relationship building aspect is really key. We work with different partners all over the province to achieve this very thing. And when we talk about displacement, we say the word displacement a lot, but I'm not sure that I necessarily defined it. But it really comes down to when development happens in communities, new development, often related to new transit projects. Developers will often come in a lot of cases, and push out the same very people who created the original fabric of that community. And that's something that we really look to avoid through a lot of our work at CP Planning. So, and on top of that, racialized communities are often the ones that, are pushed out the most and displaced the most. And that is really the focal point of our work and the focal point of the roadmap. And this workshop is part of that very same roadmap.
So you heard the overall goal of this roadmap project, and you know the issue at hand, the displacement issue within transit-oriented communities and relating to transit-oriented development. So the objectives of this roadmap project is really to collaborate with people across different spaces, industries, to achieve zero displacement. So basically making sure that no one gets displaced with transit-oriented development. We want to quicken the pace of affordable housing development, quicken the amount of units, affordable units being built. We want to empower racialized communities to be able to be owners and operators of their own affordable housing. We want to build capacity of residents and community leaders to equip them with the knowledge, skills, relationships, resources needed to actively participate in the planning and housing processes in their neighborhoods. And we want to come together to build consensus across the housing industry to help, invest and build solutions, come up with best practices to achieve zero displacement, protect affordable housing, increase that affordable housing supply, and as well as build local capacity.
So this slide is really just to show that, we've accomplished and achieved a lot over the last year, and we're a year into the roadmap, which is very exciting. And to celebrate that excitement, actually, I'll briefly mention, we have our roadmap annual party coming up in November. If you want more information about that, feel free to reach out after. But this slide is really just to highlight, how far we've come in just a short year.
So, as we mentioned, the title of this workshop series is Winning Affordable Housing for a Community. We have 5 great, excellent, exciting workshop sessions over the next few months. The first one being today, the next one coming up in December. And basically, the goal of this is to be able to build community capacity as well as to help residents to effectively engage and work with key stakeholders, so such as decision makers, city staff, city officials, policymakers, and more to be able to achieve your affordable housing goals, whatever they may be. So I will be sharing the link to the rest of our workshop series. If you could click on the next slide, sorry. Sean. So we have a lot of, as I mentioned, a few series happening over the next few months. So I'll be sharing a link for those who are interested in joining our future sessions, as well as to get a bit more information on that as well too. So for this session specifically, the landscape for affordable housing development processes and policies, it'll be led by, as we mentioned, by Naama Blonder. And what we plan to do today or this evening we plan to delve into the development process in Ontario, really break down the complexities to be able to navigate the system a lot better. And our hope is that you will feel empowered to take action in your in the neighborhood with this new knowledge. Well, it might not be new for everyone, it might be a refresher for some people, or this session hopefully advance some of that existing knowledge that you have. But the idea is that we hope you feel empowered and be able to come together within your communities to really plan and implement your local affordable housing initiatives.
So that brings us to the icebreaker. No, I'm not going to make everybody get up and dance. We're going to just do a sharing session where we actually talk about, which community are that you're representing today, and maybe talk about what are some of the housing challenges in your community. So I encourage everybody to either put this in the chat. You can all put it in the chat, but you also can raise your hand if you want to speak for a second and say which community you're representing, and maybe talk about a couple challenges that you might be having. I see someone has raised their hand. Can we unmute them? Is that Rolla?
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, Rollo. You should be able to.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi,
Great.
Rolla.
Great. Hi, everyone. Honestly, I don't know how this reached my inbox. I'm so glad I got it, maybe through Naama. I've attended sessions with her in the past. Anyways, I work with Willowdale Community Legal Services, community legal clinic funded by Legal Aid Ontario. We serve low-income people living in our catchment area. And the main reason I'm attending this session tonight is our office is taking the lead on getting deeply, not affordable, not affordable. Affordable is not enough for our clients and the population that we serve. Deeply affordable housing on a project that's happening around the Fairview Mall. It's Don Valley North. Several condominiums are coming up in the next 10 to 20 years. Of course, the challenges are, the request is 20% affordable housing. Of course, we're not going to get that, but we're pushing. We may get 4%. Of course, with the lack of community benefits, Section 37 being eliminated by the provincial government, a lot of pushback by the developers. We have come together in the community and created Build a Better Fairview, and we meet on a weekly basis. We're meeting with the city staff. We're working with the councillor in our area, and we started a petition. So many things I may share throughout the session. I'm not gonna take more time, but I'm looking forward to learning with you tonight and maybe get some guidance on how to proceed and how to have our work, like how to make it fruitful for the communities we serve.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Rolla. And you're doing really, really great work. And I think that's a testament to why this workshop is very important. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Vihara, I hope I'm saying that right, Vihara.
Hello, yes, you're said it right.
Perfect, thank you.
Hi, I am Vihara Linage, and I am an international student here. So I come from Brampton, and I study at Algoma University, and I'm studying community economics and social development. So why I'm here today is actually to learn about the housing issues and what maybe what I can do to help the international students who are facing the same affordable housing issues here. And yeah, basically I'm here to learn. And I got the information from Toronto Community Benefits Network. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Vihara, and you're definitely come to the right place. So thank you. Does anybody else want to share? Do we have something in the chat, maybe?
Yeah, we have a few in the chat here as well too. I'll just briefly go over it. We have someone here from Kitchener-Waterloo who's experienced a lot of gentrification from the LRT project. I know that I used to live in Waterloo as well too while they were building the LRT, so I know that very well. And housing prices have gone up exponentially in the last few years. We have different grassroots initiatives related to affordable housing, but hoping to learn more about the systemic solutions. And we have Vanessa as well too from South Central Etobicoke. On our main pain points are overwhelming lack of affordable housing, vast condo development, and food security from young to seniors.
Great. Thank you everybody for sharing. It's really appreciated. And be assured that you've all come to the right place. This is a place to learn. We're all learning too. And that leads me into my next slide. We have the wonderful Naama Blonder here today. So I'll briefly go over her bio. In her professional practice, Blonder combines the disciplines of architecture, urban planning, and urban design to bring a deeper, more realistic understanding of how cities can address housing affordability and champion inclusive neighborhoods with more equitable access to housing. To fight stigma around housing, Blonder's work seeks to inform both residents and industry colleagues about the mutually beneficial outcomes of reimagining what our big cities can look like. Greater access to established public transport, shorten commutes, improve housing costs and vacancy rates, greater diversity in housing, and strengthen local economies and communities. Naama is very aligned with what we want to achieve here today, and I'm really excited to present her. Naama, feel free to take over. Thank you for being
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for everyone who showed up on a Tuesday at 7 p.m. I know it's a really tough time to show up, generally, and especially if you have little ones. So thank you so much. Just so you know, I logged in and I said, how many people do you think are going to show up? Do you think we're going to have 20 people? So we are almost 50. So thank you so much for everyone. I really appreciate it. So here's what I hope to cover tonight. I am an architect and an urban planner. I only do multi-family housing by principle. I do not design single-family houses. And yes, I've turned down some really big and really healthy budget housing projects of single-family houses because I don't believe this is what the city needs right now. So I do everything on the spectrum of affordability, and I will talk a lot about it. Affordability as a spectrum. As Rolla said, affordable is not enough, right? What is affordability? What is attainable housing, affordable housing? We currently have a project that is a 29 bed, so it's technically a shelter for people who experience homelessness, and we work all the way with private sector developers, but they have to have affordability in their project. And for me, even rental, like we're in such a severe crisis that for me, even rental is a mean of affordability, even if it's market rate. So we're going to talk about everything. I do have some slides. I do have some visuals, but I really don't want to lose you with a presentation deck. So what I'm hoping to have is a conversation. And feel free to raise your hand and ask me a question because I don't want to lose you, okay? So by all means, this could very much be a conversation. And I really want to get to know the audience. Do you mind putting one in the chat if you are part of the housing industry? As in, I just want to make sure that if I'm using some professional language, I want to make sure that you've heard it before. And please put 2 if you are just a passionate community member, but I should really stay away from any jargon, which is, I guess, a good advice generally. So 1 if you're in the industry and 2 if you're not. Just want to get a feel of who. Okay, seeing more 1. Okay, I still think I see more 1 than 2, but definitely a mix. Okay, that's great. That's great. That's good to know because even if everyone is from the industry, I don't want to speak in a language that feels too basic. So it's good to know that we have a mix. So here's the way affordable housing is being developed or delivered currently in the city today. Option one is that it's by not-for-profit organization, such as I'm on the board of Kehila, St. Clair, St. Felix. These are organizations that provide deeply affordable housing. Then you have the private sector that through different mechanisms, they provide a component or a smaller portion of their development, and in that case they will team up with a not-for-profit organization and will say, here are 10 units for you to manage in the future. Now, even choosing that organization, you have as a community a lot of power, because it's an organization that could come from and within the community, the local community, okay? And we're going to talk about your role in it, even if you're, not coming from the not-for-profit world. The third mechanism is that, as Roland mentioned, through what it used to be called Section 37. Section 37 is just a fancy term to say to the developer, in return to the density, you need to provide community benefits. Those community benefits could be a splash pad, could be a library, could be a landscape that is for the benefit of the public, and it could also be affordable housing. Very interestingly, in many, many projects, up until very recently, let's say I live downtown, okay? So there's a mega project called The Well on Spadina and Front. I think it has, I don't remember the exact number, but I should have known that. But it's a really big project, okay? I think it's 3 million square foot of residential. Zero affordable housing. Why? Because back then, when this project was negotiated with the councillor, affordable housing was not a priority or was not considered community benefits, and therefore it was not part of the negotiation. Today, Section 37, community benefits, all of that is being wrapped and packaged under a new title called community benefits, like they gave it just one name, and it's a formula. It's a formula based on 4% of the increased value of the land. So it is still a mechanism of, okay, what are you given in return to the density? But the province has completely changed the way it is being worked. So they took out the negotiation component of it. Okay, so we have not-for-profit, we have the private sector, and we have some programs led by the City of Toronto, such as Housing Now. So Housing Now is a program that on city-owned land, the city is making a public bid, a public RFP for developers to say, we're going to lease, you're going to lease, to rent the land for 99 years. In return, the development that you're going to build here is going to be third condo, third rental, and third affordable rental, and a component out of it of deeply affordable. So if the third that the city wanted to develop across all the sites will be providing a 40,000 affordable rental units, 18,000 of them should have been deeply affordable. As of today, November 7th, 2023, 10 sites of the Housing Now project are so rezoned, okay? So they are ready to start construction. So far, only one project out of, I believe, 19 sites, only one started construction, and that is near the Kipling GO station. By the way, all of those sites are near TTC surplus land, okay? That's kind of the premise of that, and under the City of Toronto. So Housing Now is the most prominent one. We heard Mayor Chow last week announcing the city as a builder, so she wants to take 5 sites out of those Housing Now and get the city to build, okay? Not doing this part that I said, teaming up with the private sector. If you ask me, it's a big risk. It's scary. It scares me as you know, as someone in the industry, because construction is a very risky process. But that's, you know, that's our mayor, and she wants to take 5 of those sites and have them city as a builder. So again, I'm doing kind of a recap. We had non-for-profit, we had private sector, and we had programs under the city that the most well-known is Housing Now. Under Housing, so parallel to Housing Now, there are other things like Open Doors, for example, that I am not sure about its current status, if it's closed, if it's open, but it's another program that, to be honest, I'm not sure how successful. Sorry, I shouldn't criticize it. I don't know. Okay, let's leave it at that. And maybe the fact that I don't know of projects that were successful under this program, maybe, you know, that's a hint right there. Now, under the government during COVID, we saw projects that called RHI, Rapid Housing Initiatives. And the government basically came and said, if you're an organization that could get the keys, right, like get this project housed within a year, we are going to finance it. So they will have also a little bit under government funding, but obviously we know back in the 90s, our federal government just said, you know, the federal government does not build or provide social housing. So this is kind of step one that I wanted to cover. Who delivers affordable housing and what are the different buckets that affordable housing is being built under, and acknowledging that affordability is a spectrum that, you know, the private sector has a play in it, but deeply affordable housing is being provided and paid by or initiated by other organizations that are not the private sector. So far, any questions that I could answer? Okay. I don't see any questions. That means that I provided a perfect explanation of what's going on. Or you're all overwhelmed with the information. That could also be an option. Okay, so let's continue and now talk from either the private or the not-for-profit perspectives on how the development process is being done. How do you deliver? How do you get the site, you know, before you can build anything? And that process is true if you are from the private sector or from not-for-profit. And you can see the problem in it, right? Because if you're non-for-profit, you should be at least get, and sometimes they are getting a little bit of you know, they put them on at the beginning of the line, but overall, as someone who works with both the private sector and the non-for-profit, unfortunately, non-for-profit organizations do not get any benefits or incentives beyond, you know, development charges, waivers, but I'm talking about the process, that the step-by-step on how long it takes, and you will see it takes a really long time. So, and I'm going to speak to every phase of it, and I will also say at what stages the community gets involved and how we see it from our perspective. So you own a site, you own the land. That's kind of the let's assume that you either own the land or have some sort of a partnership with someone who is the owner of the land, right? Because without it, it will be very, very hard to get the site rezoned and built. So the land is already yours. There's, of course, an acquisition that comes before it, but there's really no point for us to cover it because the community has zero involvement in it. The land is owned and you want to start the development approval process. You already have an idea of how much you can build here. How do you have this idea? Because we have policies, we have things like the official plan and the land use map that says, okay, in this color, you can have retail and commercial, and on top of it residential. This is near transit, this is where the highest density should go. Or this is yellow, which is, I'm sure Cheryl talks a lot about it. And these are, again, terms that for me as a planner, I'm having a really hard time with those terms, saying stable neighborhoods or protected neighborhoods. Protect from whom and from what exactly, right? Why are we protecting single family houses when we're in the midst of a housing crisis? And that's, I talk a lot about the missing middle. Why do we have only single family houses and hyper density? We need to be, and imagine Montreal, for example, right? Like we need more of the in between. And for me, the missing middle is not just height, it's also income, and it's also families, and it's the diversity of our communities that are the current market does not reflect the needs of our diversity. So missing middle is a term I encourage you to Google what it says. So we know what we're gonna, more or less, what is achievable on the site. Is it a mid-rise? Is it a tall building? Is it low-rise? We know that from different policies. Then we approach the city, and the city says yes or no, like, these are the things that we will support. Here you need to take this additional setback. Transportation gives you feedback. And then you make an application, a rezoning application. So basically, and that is one of the problems in the city, the zoning of the city has not been changed or modified for decades. So every time you want to do something, you're going through a rezoning application for that specific site. And it's a problem. It's a problem because it makes it very costly, it makes it very timely, and it is kind of initiating a lot of our housing issues. But you still need to do it. So you're submitting a rezoning application. Then, as part of the rezoning application, because we have a democratic process and the community must provide its input, we host an open house. And this is basically the first time on the record that the community is invited to provide a feedback. As you can imagine, there's a lot of problems with that. How do you make sure that the community is really aware? Who is coming to those open houses? I started the conversation today by thanking you for showing up here on the Tuesday at 7 p.m. I have 2 kids. I had to do quite an arrangement today to be here at 7 p.m., right? So let alone going to an open house that, let's say, has affordable housing component in it, for me to really say, yes, we need it, that's a lot of effort for a mother to go through at 7 p.m. So usually those who go are those who really object, and those who specifically object affordable housing, because all of things that I think that the human response to it is like, it's a lot of fear of the unknown. Is it going to be well designed? Is it going to be safe? How is it going to be operated? So I can share with you that as the architect and the planner who, I'm not a developer, I just lead the project, I see and hear a lot of no's. A lot of no's that I started volunteering with an organization that where there is affordable housing submission. I go there as a volunteer, not projects that are not mine, and say, yes, we need this. Yes, we need affordable housing in this project, because usually you get those who are very passionate no's, right? So first thing that I want you to get out of today's workshop is the importance of going and saying yes to the project. You need the support. The city needs to hear you say yes. Yes, we need this. This is what we need. And we're going to talk about projects that you object and how you can approach the developer. But specifically, for projects of affordable housing, and it could be a wide range of affordability. Usually you get, last week my neighbor came to me and say, you have to sign this petition. They're going to do affordable housing across the street from where we live. And I looked at him and I said, wow, you really don't know what I do for a living, do you? I spend my days calling these petitions out and how we could better deliver. And that's what I told my neighbor. An 80-bed shelter means that 80 people who experience homelessness are going to have a bed. That's exactly what it means. It's a good thing. So the importance of going and saying yes, although it's not comfortable and although it's not convenient, is really, really important. So that on the side of YIMBY, right? Like, yes, in my backyard, yes, we need it. This is what we need. Now, let's talk about scenarios that it's not just affordable housing, or you really want to, to see what the developer could do. So let me share with you, and I know it's really hard sometimes to imagine the perspective of a developer, but most of the time, when I say most, I mean like 98% of developments, developers are just used to hear, we don't want this height, we don't want this density, it's too tall. It's just an automatic no. And for a developer who has similar projects, they're used to it. I know for the community, it feels like it's original, or it's for them, it's the first time. But what I think could be very, very refreshing, and that's why I'm here talking to communities, try, instead of saying no to the height or the density, try to approach the developer in a more refreshing way and say, you know what, we don't care if it's an extra story here or there, because the policy allows it, right? Like, there will be no tall building in an area where the city does not allow it. But we really want, and then you can name what it is that you want. Now, obviously, you're not going to get a recreational center in an 8-story building, but what if you do want maybe a community kitchen or a community garden that is, but things that are very, very realistic? The developer, by not fighting you, will save so much time and money that it will be in their best interest to provide this. And it could also be, guarantee a certain percentage to be below market, or certain to be, well, rental or condo is kind of a decision that is based on many, many, many factors. So that's not always easy to do. But there's so many ways for the community to come and say, listen, we're not going to fight you on this, but this is what we want. We want to improve. Or you could even have not something on site, but actually something off site. And let's say there's a park that really needs, I don't know, some refreshment, okay, some refreshing the landscape. It will be, first of all, I'm sure it will be welcomed by the developer, and it will be much, much easier. So fighting height and density oftentimes is just a completely waste of everyone's time, because if the policy allows a certain height and density, the developer, even if the city says no, the developer will fight it in court and will get it, because this is what the policy allows. And what it ended up, everyone just wasted a lot of time and energy fighting the wrong fight. I'm telling you, I was in council, and someone was objected a hotel on King West. And I was like, you're wasting everyone's time. Of course, a hotel will be on King West. B, it is a use that is allowed as of right. So she was just there, just wasting everyone's time. Now, this is, I admit, an extreme scenario of really fighting a use that is permitted in the official plan. But I'm just saying, just imagine a whole other dialogue with developers that could really benefit you as a community, and you could really actually get a lot. And I'm on record here, so I'm trying to not expose too much that it could be sensitive, but you could actually make it very beneficial for you and your community by having the right type of dialogue. Okay, so this is kind of another big part that I wanted to cover. I'm sure you have questions. I'll start reading them. Can you explain what density mean in reference to a building? So oftentimes what community sees is just the height of the building, and they hear there's going to be 12, 13, 15, 25, 28 stories, no, it doesn't matter. And the density in that sense is just, you know, and thank you for asking that, but it's just basically how much homes you're going to fit on a site. And I always say density is not just, or dense does not equal crowded, right? Like we could really do things. We need the density. We need the density not just because we're in a housing crisis. We need the density because retail on Main Street needs to thrive and succeed. And without the pedestrian flow, without people on our main streets, retail, the moms and pops that we love so much, could not survive. So that's what I mean by density. And thank you so much for asking this important question. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll continue. So we were at the open house and the conversation with the developer. Then so height would be something like 12-story building, and the density would be 10 apartments or units per floor. So it could be 10 units per floor. It could be that the entire building will have 120 units. So that is also a measurement of density. But it also needs to have, so one of the measurements that we use, for example, is called FSI, which is floor space index. And that is a ratio between the envelope and how big the site is. Because just imagine a 12-story on, I don't know, a size of a, I'm trying to give it like a McDonald's drive-through, is a very different ratio in comparison to a 12-story on a site of just a moms and pops, you know, small store, right? Like this is also measurement of density. That's called FSI. Perfect. So then the project is being voted in council. So that's why talking to your local councillor is so important, and because they have really the authority and power to shift things around. And I can tell you that many councillors are not even willing to speak to developers. They say, oh, you're a developer, we're not talking to you. And why? Why is it that, why is this, you know, the entire process of delivering housing for people is so adversarial that so many of the councillors in the city, it's an automatic no just because a developer reaches out to you. Like, you see what I'm trying to describe to you, to see it from the perspective of the industry. Developers are, again, and just so you know, I always say that for me, I want to empower good developers. Those who are bad developers, I don't care about them. But those who are good developers, how can we find a way to really celebrate their work? And everything in this city is so adversarial from the developer's perspective. Councillors are not willing to talk to them. Communities are, you know, making them walk through hell. I want a city building exercise that will look completely different. And I think we have the power to really make that change happen. Yeah, maybe let's see what comes up from tonight. Any other questions? Okay, so it's being voted in council. And basically, if the project is being rejected by council, in theory, it could be settled in court. But I don't have experience with that, because all I do is to take projects through the cities, with the community, through the cities, collaboration and relationships. So I don't have experience with the court part of things. That's basically it. That's what I wanted to cover for today. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yeah, feel free to just unmute yourself.
I'll just jump in. Thank you for presenting. That was helpful. I guess I'm wondering, like, I understand that it doesn't make sense to fight someone who's already got the capital to build housing when obviously the government doesn't provide enough funding for deeply affordable housing. But at the same time, I kind of feel like, what is the point in winning a community kitchen or whatever thing it might be if you really cannot afford to buy a house in this building that they're building?
Yeah. Yeah, and that is, I want to speak to that. And I'm not an economist, okay? One of the things that I really push for is to build more condos or apartments, doesn't matter the ownership, right? Condos if you own it, apartment if you rent it, for families. And I think the more we will have that as a product, and I really don't like when people like say in our industry housing as a product, but let's assume we could, let's for one moment we will imagine that we will have a lot of this product, then people will really start living. Because one of the things that I always say, that what the housing we provide right now does not reflect what we need. We just build and design for investors and not for the end user, and that end up in a dramatic difference of what we need. So I know that I'm what I'm saying is it doesn't really address the affordability in its core, but I do want to believe that if we build more housing that are larger or more family friendly, because right now we don't have it. When I was looking for a 3-bedroom apartment, we couldn't find it. And you can pick up my accent. I wasn't born here. You don't need to convince me that raising a family in an apartment is, I don't want to say even legit, right? But like 50% of Torontonians were not born in Canada. In Europe, in the Middle East, we lived in apartments. But you come here and it seems like a house with a backyard is the only cultural acceptance that you get when it comes to housing. And that is really problematic. So when I bring it up to developers, you know what developers tell me? Oh, we don't have families who want to live in apartments, so we don't build it. If the market doesn't want it, we don't provide it. But what if we build a lot of it, right? And that will necessarily mean that it's also more affordable, because you will just bring the market down. And I started by saying that I'm not an economist, because I don't want to say, oh, it's supply and demand. It's like say, empty words when I really don't know what will bring affordability down. But one of the things is exactly that. I'm sorry if I didn't really address your question, but that's all I could think of on how we could, and it's not, by the way, if you're part of the community, that you probably don't need to buy a unit in this building if you already live there, right? Or if there was a rental replacement, so you will be getting a new unit in the development. So and part of this workshop or the roadmap that CP Planning is leading is, the development without displacement, right? And that is crucial. So, Rola, do you have a question?
Yeah, we've been through the processes that you mentioned. Actually, we demanded that we get more community engagement and community consultations when we heard about the project, because the community did not know about the original consultation meeting that happened in the community. And the councillor worked with us. She brought a motion that the community needs to be engaged. And they scheduled 2 meetings. That was earlier in March this year. And since then, we have been active in the community. We're in the process now of scheduling a meeting with the developer.
Yeah.
Okay. And as I mentioned, we have several asks, including quality public space, affordable housing is the first ask, 20%, and equitable economic development and employment opportunities for local residents, etc. Like, we have several asks. The first is affordable housing, deeply affordable housing. how do we approach the developer? How do we've met
Okay.
the developers at the consultation meetings.
Yeah.
We exchanged business cards. They sent an email to me and my colleague, believe it or not, saying, well, we look forward to working together with you for the benefit of the community. And then the counselor tells us 4% of the first application of 3 condo buildings, which is down to 40 units out of 1,200 out of the first application, right? So we need to meet with the developer.
Yeah.
How do we approach the developer? How do we convince the developer that there is a huge need in the community for affordable housing?
I'm going to drop a bomb, okay? Without knowing who the developer is, and I don't want to know in this forum, but please, you have my email, Rola. Feel free to get in touch with me after. What if, okay, here's a refreshing idea. You're coming to the developer and you're telling them this. We will support, and you can say it as an if we support actually 3 more stories. You said there are 3 condo buildings or buildings.
That's the first application that's already on the table.
And you're going to say, we will actually want more, but you will commit that third of anything that is on top of what you thought you're going to get is going to be deeply affordable. So you're still getting 2/3 extra than what you thought we're going to get. We will support it as the community, but 1/3 of them are going to be deeply affordable. And we want your commitment to level of affordability, and we will support it. Because right now, I'm telling you, I just want to be in the room where the developer and the counselor and everyone is going to hear it, that the community is coming and saying, build more, but 1/3 of it is going to be deeply affordable. Because what happens in construction, Rola, is that, you know, it's not quoting me, I'm quoting my friend Mark Richardson, who says, it's like they're adding the 99 cents in McDonald's to get a bigger fries and bigger burger. When you're already in construction, you already have excavation, which is the most expensive part in development. You already have building 3 more stories for achieving affordable housing is an extremely efficient mathematics. Okay, let's put it that way. So try this, see if you'll have support, right? Like if affordable housing is that important to you, are you willing to not fight them on other fronts, right? This is the part of conversations, because for developers, the bottom line needs to work, not because they're greedy, because if the Excel doesn't work, there is no development, right? Like let's get the basics right. So and it's a very risky, you can see now how many of them are bankrupt because, you know, something changed and the numbers like drastically don't work anymore. Mary, I see you want to say something.
Thanks, Naama.
Yeah. I think I'll use some of the Ottawa example, the Dream Liberton Flats. The NCC, the federal government, Canada Lands, discounted land from about $30.5 million down to $3 million. And they were a partnership of doing asset management with a nonprofit multi-faith housing initiative, which enabled them to access some very good funding through our CFI and other CMHC program. They managed to achieve 133 units to MHI at 59% of median market rent in perpetuity, and Dream has agreed to do 117 units at 79% of median market rent for 55 years. The one of the things I want to be a little bit cautious about, most people, when they think of deeply affordable, think of RGI, rent geared to income. And that's very hard to achieve without operating subsidies or such a large capital grant to make make, or at least a mix of it, possible to have a portion that's deeply
That's
affordable.
actually a very good point, Mary. Which
Yeah.
I guess I assumed, Rolla, when you mentioned it, that deeply affordable, at least in the industry, is referred to shelters. Okay, so make sure that you, all of you, use the right
It's
terminology.
rent geared to income, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I think it's easy to negotiate something as a percentage of average market rent.
Yeah,
But I
Mary, that's
think
an excellent point. Thank you.
the
Yeah.
deeply affordable, it's going to be challenging unless you're
Mhm.
willing to settle for a smaller percent.
Mhm.
Like we have another development that wants additional height. And last year they came in for consultation with several members of Centertown Community Association and members of the community. I know their track record. I know they're going to ask for additional height. So first session, I asked, what are you doing for affordable housing? What are you doing for accessible housing? What are you doing for family size units? And kind of he and ha and said, oh, depends on what kind of programs available. And they say, oh, we'll do what's required by the code. Ontario Building Code is 15% accessible, which is very low, to be honest. It's a lagging indicator. And family size units, they say they haven't determined their unit mix.
45,
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah. And so when they came earlier this year, nothing was mentioned about affordable housing. Nothing was mentioned about accessible housing. And they had 50 units out of 1,000 to be bedrooms. Okay. So, and I was interviewed and I basically say, you know, if they want additional height, there should be something for the community. And it was interviewed by CBC and say, you know, if they do something for community, I'm willing to sacrifice my tomatoes because I live kitty corner from it. And I think the councillors have been pushing it. So they are coming back saying for the additional 300 units, they're willing to do 100 unit affordable, but they have been low kg, what level of affordability and for how long. So that's still being negotiated. But sometimes, you know, if you start putting up some resistance, they don't want the delay. So, you know, they could do the number and figure out what's possible, right?
Yeah. Are there any other, how can I see all the heads? Oh, here. Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
I do have another question because
Yes,
we didn't
please.
really end up talking about nonprofit developers as much. So like I'm working with a community organization and we might be able to get access to a piece of land. So can we just approach a nonprofit developer, or like how does that work if you have land and you want to build affordable housing on it with your community?
Right. So that, you know, that's actually a great question. I never, so when you say, sorry, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but when you say that you may have access to land, who is the owner of the land?
So it's the region of Waterloo has control of this land, and we've been in conversations with them for an extended amount of time now. And it's with an Indigenous group of folks that we're working with. And so it would likely be a partnership between them and a kind of land trust organization and the region. And so we basically, I don't know how we would yeah, I mean, we have to sort out the ownership aspect, what exactly the deal is going to be.
Yeah.
But if we do sort that out, who do we get to like help us through grant applications and putting up the money for the building?
Exactly. And that would be my first recommendation. Don't try to do it yourself. It's really a process for experts who that's what they do for a living, right?
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend finding the not-for-profit housing provider who could take you through that process. There are companies like I think it's called SHS. If you follow up with me, I can make an introduction. But they're for-profit consulting service, like a consulting company, that if you have like, let's say a minimal funding for them, they could take you through, they will apply for CMHC for you. But again, it's not for the amateur developer. It's they take the non-for-profit organizations who could provide housing through the development application. And the other thing I just wanted to say, all this world of land trust and I never had experience. It's really rare. We rarely have co-ops in Canada these days, unfortunately. So maybe that could be an ask for CP planning team to maybe have, that could be a whole other topic to, you know, community-led housing, right? Like here, the topic of today's webinar is how can we, in the development landscape of today, how can we ensure that our community, you know, ensure is a strong word, but how can we collaborate in order to provide more housing? When you want to be your own developer or your own co-op or land trust, it's a whole other story. Mary, you know, I don't know if you know each other, but I feel like Mary will be a good resource here.
Okay. Thank you.
Simon, I have myself and my advocacy partner have been talking to Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Infrastructure, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Housing Infrastructure, Canada Infrastructure Bank, and CMHC. And one of the things we've been talking about is trying to get them to be amenable to a program similar to Section 95, that's around 1979 to 1986, where the federal government had a subsidized interest rate of 2% that was available. And somebody I know applied for it and got it, and used the money to acquire the rental building they were in and made it into a 9-unit co-op. So that is something a few of us have been trying to advocate for. But the grant for deeply affordable housing is very challenging right now. CMHC until recently was down to $25,000 a door, and they have added two additional $25,000 per door, block one for deeply affordable, one for green builds. But when I look at the deeply affordable, the requirement's pretty stiff for the $25,000.
Yeah.
So so it's gonna be and until the government become more serious.
And then it's even not enough. Exactly. And even that is not enough. It's far from being enough. Yes, I also wanted to bring that up. The Infrastructure Institute. Please read what Shannon just posted. But the Infrastructure Institute is if you are a not-for-profit who owns land and want to build on top of it. Any other questions? I believe now is the time to get into the survey and networking, but just to keep everything on track. And I don't see any other hands raised. So I would like just to thank you again, and for CP Planning for inviting me to kick this. I didn't know it's like this is the kickoff session. I'm very, very honored, and thank you very much. And I put my LinkedIn in the chat, so feel free to reach out after this. So thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much, Naama. This discussion was very insightful, and I'm sure, you know, folks really learned a lot. And yeah, we're honored to have you at the first session, of course. I'm going to share my screen again. Is there any more questions for Naama before she goes?
Sir, I have one quick question. Just about if you've had any experience with communities that didn't want like affordable units in their, I guess, area. Like, what were those conversations like, and did, I guess, development even happen? Because there was
it happens. That's exactly the thing. And I don't want to, like, you know, I shared with you the story of my neighbor who came and said, oh my God, we have to object this. And I think a lot of it is really the fear of the unknown. And that's really kind of pointing to the city. put a rendering of how it's going to look like. Like I tried to Google it and see how, you know, this 80-bed shelter is going to look like. I couldn't find anything. And I'm an architect working in the industry, right? Like I know where to look. So it's really about, you know, for the community to demand certain things. And especially I really have the empathy of, it's scary, you know, how is it good? Like we look at streets like Sherborne in some of its area, Bathurst, you know, I was in LA last week. I was told, do not go to these, you know, X, Y, and Z streets because it's really unsafe. Do not cross anywhere under a highway. You know, we have that fear of the unknown. At the same time, there are things that we could demand in design that I, for example, make sure that all of my projects, when we do those, you know, deeply affordable shelters, that, you know, it could be things like do not leave too much space to the street because it accumulates waste, for example, right? Like it's just the nature of these buildings. So at the end of the day, it will be built. If the city identified that site, that this is where they're going to build shelters, this is where it's going to be built. But there's a lot of room for the community. And if the operator, for example, does not do a good job, does not carry the waste or waste management in a timely manner, in a manner, you know, that is really affect the environment, you have all the rights to complain to the city. So it's definitely, you know, and that's kind of the message that I wanted to leave you with. Choose your battles, right? Like choose how you approach the city. It's not about yes or no. It's okay. How can we make it the best project that we can? And with that, I'll wish you all good night and let you do the final part of this evening. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wait, before, not everyone leave. We got a couple more things before we go. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Can we see my screen? Yes. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so no one go yet. I really won't go over the summary of learning because I think we kind of covered that. But I want to thank everyone for sharing their time. Before we go, we have a quick survey we want you to fill out because it really helps us understand, you know, where everybody's at, how we can improve, you know, maybe some takeaways that you had from today, just so we can really improve this for the future. It's our first one. And we really, this survey really helps us and helps us help you more. So we'll get to that in a second. Also, I want to announce that the next workshop is on December 7th. And I'll thank everyone after, but we'll get to this. I'll jump into the survey. So before you do the survey, and Shannon's going to have the link in the chat. We also have a QR code here for people who want to use their phones. We value diversity and strive to understand the varied backgrounds of our community members. The information collected here is for reporting purposes to ensure our services are reaching all communities. The response is voluntary, confidential, and will be used solely for statistical analysis to improve our program. So I just want to state that because we have some very specific questions, but it's really important to us to make sure we're serving, you know, all of the communities that we said we're going to serve. So Shannon, were you able to drop that link in the chat?
Yeah, I could drop it again, just in case some people missed it. Also, I'll drop the code just in case if you access a link and they're asking you for a code.
Get back to the So with that, while you fill out the survey, I want to thank everybody for sharing their time, their insights, and their expertise. I definitely learned a lot, and it was really good to hear everybody share with each other. With that being said, there's some extra time also if you want to network and get contact information or speak to anybody or ask any questions. I will leave the meeting open till 8:30 as we said we would. and yeah, just give you a chance to connect with each other or connect with us. And also, if you're having trouble accessing the survey, please let us know and we'll help you out as well. Thank you, Rola. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Niara. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Aldofina. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Victoria. Bye, Rola.